Hello everybody, Josh 12 back here again with another video. I'm here to give you an official movie review for They Live. Personally, I originally was going to do this quite early, but I've been very busy, so I've been incapable of doing this specific review. But overall, this is just a dedication to one of my childhood heroes, Roddy Piper. Obviously died very recently, unfortunately, and of course, I was originally going to do a dedication to him in my top 5 list, but overall, I thought it would just be more better and respectful if I dedicated an entire review to him, to one of my personal favorite John Carpenter movies, and a movie that Roddy Piper actually starred in, and he was the protagonist of this movie. So, that being said, let's get into They Live. They Live is obviously a science fiction horror film written and directed by the master of horror himself, John Carpenter. As you all know, I'm a huge Carpenter fan, and I love his entire filmography from beginning to end, even the crappy ones, even, I love them all. They're just really awesome, and he's a legend, and I still believe he doesn't get the respect and love he deserves for being such a creative and influential filmmaker. But that being said, They Live follows the story of a drifter called, in the credits, John Nada, who's played by Roddy Piper, who discovers the fact that in this town that he's drifted towards, that apparently there's this alien race that are concealing themselves using these techno-based weaponry in the skies that have left people manipulated into spending money and breeding and basically accepting subliminal messages through mass media. And essentially, John Nada's character, Roddy Piper's character, discovers this through finding glasses from this small church of these underground alliances that are against these aliens, and discovers the fact by putting on these glasses, it disrupts the, rays of these machines, so he gets to see what the real world is actually like just by putting on these glasses, and goes on this mission, this full-on assault with his best friend character, who's played by Keith David, and his love interest character, who's played by Meg Foster, in destroying this alien race and sending him back home and showing the world what the reality is actually like, which is that these aliens are amongst us, and they basically have been for X amount of years have been manipulating us to spending money and doing all these things that they wanted us to do. And it's an amazing story. It's a badass, awesome, great story. And it was the first movie that really taught me about subliminal messaging. I had no idea what subliminal messaging even meant until I saw They Live. They Live really was the focus of what that message really means. And the art and the messages really speak on its own. This movie, if anything, has to be the definitive John Carpenter movie as him as a filmmaker, other than just a horror master, because it may have its awesome sci-fi elements, and it may have its awesome horror elements, but the great thing about it is its themes, its tone. The great tone and themes in this movie stand on its own 2 feet, and they're epic and badass. The subliminal messaging, the obey messages, the this is your god, money, this is your god, the mass media, the influences that this culture has had on our world and how it affects us, really makes you want to think and okay, that's not so different from the real world we're at right now. This is a reality that we have now. We're looking at TV screens, we're looking at these posters at what we want to be, we're looking at these stars, we're looking at the internet, we're looking at all these mass media websites and social networking and all these various messages. What are the real subliminal messages of the status quo? And that's what this movie does perfectly, and it's amazing. And of course, amongst all its awesomeness and messaging, it also gives us one of the most badass on-screen fights of all time between Roddy Piper's character and Keith David's character, when they go on a full assault against one another. And I know for a fact that probably there isn't any major theme to the fight itself, but but I think the fight itself resembles us accepting the fact that this is a reality. Keith David's character is kind of like us, where we don't want to accept the fact that the world that we're living in is a lie, and these are actually aliens who are just controlling our minds and telling us what we should or should not like. And that's how I like to think about it, because Keith David's character as amazing as Keith David plays it out, he really doesn't want to be a part of anything that Roddy Piper is a part of. Roddy Piper is a drifter. He doesn't really have anything. He's a nameless character at the end of the day, and he just comes across this reality that he's trying to force feed into Keith David's character. So you have this real God versus demon kind of aspect of the movie where you have this character trying to tell the other character, put on these freaking glasses. You need to see the world. It's like They Live is pre-Matrix and at World's End rolled up into one movie. If you ever seen like the Wachowski's Matrix or ever saw Edgar Wright's At World's End, it's basically They Live predates those movies and does it definitively in this specific genre, in the sci-fi horror genre. It does it perfectly, and it's amazing. The tone, the themes, the messaging, the influence on mass media it has on people and society. Overall, it's awesome. Roddy Piper's character is badass. This role is pretty much his definitive role, seeing as how majority of every other role is kind of like he's playing his on-screen Roddy Piper persona, if you will. So overall, the character that he plays here is amazingly done and really awesome. And I think the greatness with that is that he's kind of like the everyman kind of dude, even though he was a pro wrestler at this point in time, and even though he was famous for being a pro wrestler, he had the outlook of like, he wasn't the Hollywood star, he wasn't the really good looking, handsome, Hollywood leading man, but he had this everyday kind of look to him, and I think that's what helped this movie out more in comparison to getting a real big named Hollywood good looking handsome actor in comparison. Keith David's character, obviously awesome. Keith David, I've always been a big fan of his, and his character in this movie is really awesome, and I just love that fight he has, and how belligerent and how unaccepting he is to accept these glasses from Roddy Piper gives him, and how this fight just unfolds. It's just really awesome. Overall, They Live is a classic within the John Carpenter filmography, and within every other actor's filmography. The writing is awesome. The directing is amazing. The music that John Carpenter adds is always classic. And the greatness of John Carpenter is that he's like the Robert Rodriguez or the Quentin Tarantino of his era. He basically did everything in every department and did it awesome. Whether it would be directing, writing, or music or editing or anything he ever touched when it came to his movies, he did it perfectly and he was awesome at it. Overall, They Live speaks on its own 2 feet with the reception it's had, the legacy it's had, the influence it's had on, cartoons, movies, television shows, sequences, iconic video games, and so on and so forth, art, popular culture. Every single aspect that this movie's had has its footing in every single aspect of what we like today, whether it be the obey symbol, whether it be the fight sequence, whether it be the aliens, whether it be the subliminal messaging. All these aspects of this movie influenced us in one way or another, and I love that. Overall, this movie is a 9 out of 10 for me. They Live is a classic, badass, solid movie for its themes, its tone, its performances, its directing, its writing, its overall relationship with the characters and how they grow and how the action just unfolds. And also the one-liners are just amazing and classic on themselves. That one sequence, spoilers, but that one sequence where just freaking Roddy Piper's character, which is my favorite line he does in the entire movie, where he comes in with a shotgun in a public bank and he just says, and he's wearing the glasses, and he just says, I came here to do 2 things: chew bubblegum and kick ass. And I'm all out of bubblegum. That's just a classic one-liner, and it's just, you don't really expect that out of a John Carpenter flick, but he just does it perfectly. That one-liner is just awesome, and it just stands on its own. They Live is a classic. John Carpenter's They Live is a classic. Roddy Piper's character in this movie is awesome overall, and I will always remember the amazing time I had watching this movie, and I always have an enjoyment in watching this movie from time and time again. This movie is a classic. I really encourage a lot of people to check it out, but overall, that's pretty much been my review. I give it a 9 out of 10 on a really, really good day. It's a classic John Carpenter flick. If you are a hardcore sci-fi horror fan and you want to see a good classic movie, check out John Carpenter's They Live. It's a classic. And of course, if you're a wrestling fan, definitely check out this movie, because out of any other wrestler, I guess with the exception of Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, The only real wrestler who's been in a really classic, epic movie of awesomeness has to be Roddy Piper in this one movie. They Live is a classic. I personally think it is, and I don't really see how anybody could really disagree on that fact. But overall, let me know what your personal thoughts are on that overall in the comment section below. Of course, this review is dedicated to one of my many childhood heroes, Roddy Piper. Rest in peace. He was awesome in this movie, and he was an awesome dude overall outside of the persona of Roddy Piper, because if there's one thing that no other person on this world could deny when it comes to wrestling characters, that they're amazing entertainers. And Roddy Piper was an amazing entertainer, and he was an amazing person, and this movie is a classic, and he was a part of it, and it was awesome to watch him go at work and kick some ass and chew some bubblegum. But overall, let me know what your personal thoughts are on Roddy Piper in this movie overall in the comment section below. I hope you guys enjoyed. Follow me on Twitter and Instagram at John12. Subscribe to my channel if you've not done so already. And this has been John12.